Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon. With me, as always, is Caleb. And we are going to be wrapping up holiday month. We are talking about Terror Train today. But before we get to that, we do like we always do. And Caleb, what have you been watching?
So not too much. I mean, I say not too much, but I actually burned through a entire season of a show. So I mean, hey, go me. That's like a miracle.
Right.
Um, I watched the second season of that show Arcane from Netflix that I've been talking
Yeah.
about. Good stuff. I mean, really enjoyed both seasons. Um, didn't really watch anything else other than that, but kind of because especially when things are new and going on right now, I don't want to dive too much into it to ruin anything for anyone. But the one thing I will say about the second season, I really do think they should have done three seasons instead of just two,
Okay.
because it felt like they were trying to cram too much into the episodes. Um, and they had so many characters you were trying to follow, where almost each episode was like about a specific like two characters, and then you would go to the next one and then it'd be about two different characters, and then they tried to wrap everything up in the last episode, and so just it really felt kind of rushed and mashed together. So a little bit of a criticism, but I mean, all in all, very entertaining. Really enjoyed it. So looking forward to finding something else similar to that to maybe watch and talk about next week.
Right. Well, for me, I don't have a whole heck of a lot. Um, I watched like one episode of Better Call Saul.
Okay.
I watched a couple episodes of The Office Superfans.
Rock.
Um, I mean, everybody seems to watch Christmas Story on Christmas because it
Hmm.
plays 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started watching Squid Game season two, and man, that is boring.
Oh no.
I
Crap.
got like
That sucks.
two episodes in. I'm like, God, like, is anything really gonna happen? Like, it seems like a whole bunch of talking.
Uh.
And I was hoping that would, like, you know, kind of get back to the games rather quickly
Hmm.
because that was what made that show interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little disappointed in that. But yeah, really, other than that, I went to the Game Above Sports Bowl at Ford Field
Oh
day
yeah.
after Christmas, and that was probably the best football game I have ever seen live in person.
Yeah.
And I did not expect that.
That was how many overtimes?
Six?
Oh, gosh.
I, s- I paid $7 for my ticket, and yeah, went into six overtimes. There was a fair amount of crazy stuff that happened in it. Like, um, there was a blocked extra point that was returned for 2 points.
Rock.
There was two pick sixes. One of them was done by a defensive lineman.
Hmm.
You don't ever really see that too much. And then yeah, the six overtime. So it was pretty interesting. But
Nice.
yeah, that's pretty much it for me. But I did watch Terror Train, so let's talk about it. Terror Train is from 1980 and is directed by Roger Spottiswoode. There's a name for you. The plot is 3 years after a prank went horribly awry, the six college students responsible are targeted by a mass killer at a New Year's Eve party aboard a moving train. The cast, we got Jamie Lee Curtis as Elena, Hart Bachner as Doc, David Copperfield as the magician, Derek McKinnon as Kenny, Sandy Curry as Mitchie, and I don't know what character this is, but I had to mention it because of who the actress is. But Vanity as Mary.
Think she was the Jasmine looking character,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, she went on to she was dating Prince for a while.
Oh,
And like
okay.
she was in a bunch of his music videos, and she had like her own singing group called the Vanity Six,
Hmm. Interesting.
and she did some acting, and then she dated Nikki Six for a while, and then she became like born again Christian. But
Huh.
she passed away a few years ago. But
Oh.
yeah, She was like
Um,
a model and everything. But
you didn't even mention Ben Johnson, bro, as
the Lions
Karn.
offensive coordinator?
No, not quite. It's funny because Ben Johnson is one of the earliest memories I have of an actor.
Yeah.
Um, there was, oh man, I don't know what the movie was called, but it was a cowboy movie my parents had, and I remember watching it as a kid multiple times. Um, and I want to say it had like Tom Selleck in it. I know one of the other guys in it was oh no, Sam Elliott.
Okay.
And it was some cowboy movie. Um,
Hmm.
and so he was it was later on, so he was much old. His character was much older, but then
Okay.
I recognized him in this, and I was like, oh yeah, it's that old cowboy guy. So
Was it Ruby, Jean, and Joe?
no,
Oh,
it
that has
was,
Tom Selleck in it. Outlaws?
or maybe it wasn't Tom Selleck.
Do you
What?
even know who was in the movie?
Oh, you know what? I might be confusing Tom Selleck in it because of my dad always watching.
Quigley Down Under.
Yep, there you go. Good one. I think it's something the brothers or some kind of. Oh man, he was in Gunsmoke and Bonanza. I didn't know that.
Huh. Well, one of the actors, did you recognize Hart Bachner?
The Sackets. Ah, there you go. Okay.
Ah. Did you recognize Hart Bachner? Do you know who that is?
No. The Doc character.
Yeah. He was also was his name Ellis in Die Hard? You know the guy that says Hans Bubby? That's him.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He looks a lot different without his big bushy beard.
Yeah. I can see it though. I can see it. I'm looking at his picture and I'm just like, okay.
I was like, I wonder if Caleb's gonna pick up on that because I know Die Hard's one of your favorite movies.
I know. I'm disappointed that I did not catch that. I will say this out of the cast, I mean, besides Jamie Lee Curtis doing a fantastic job, I thought it was kind of comical having David Copperfield in it.
Yeah, I've seen this movie a few times. I think the first time I didn't even really recognize David Copperfield,
Hmm.
and then I ended up seeing him on something else, and then I watched the movie again, and I'm like, oh man, it's David Copperfield. But I always think like, why in the heck is David Copperfield in this movie?
Yeah. Because he was pretty famous already by then, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how his career went. I mean,
I,
this was 1980.
yeah, I was looking up things and I saw that he started really kind of hitting some big things kind of around 77, 78. So I feel like, he
On
didn't
the
need to,
cusp.
yeah, he did not need to do this for like exposure or anything.
Yeah,
Not sure exactly how he would get exposure for, something that you could easily do um trick filming photography for, but anyways, you know
right.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I feel like magic plays better in person than it does in movies.
what I would love, and I don't know if it happened or not, if there was a movie, they should have remade this movie and had David Blaine be the musician or the magician.
Or that guy that was on YouTube that used to pretend to be David Blaine and make fun of his tricks. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, yep, I know. Like, didn't they draw his mustache on with like a pencil or something? I
Yeah,
think.
pretty much. He had that backwards hat on all the time and a
Um,
wide-eyed look on his face.
it's gonna be funny because people listening to this are either gonna completely know what we're talking about or have absolutely no idea whatsoever.
Yeah, if you pretty much if you're under the age of 30, you're probably not going to know what we're talking.
Yeah. Who's
This
that?
is this was early. I don't even know if it was YouTube. It probably predated YouTube.
Yeah, I think
But
so. It was like late 90s, early 2000s.
yeah, it could have been like an E-bombs world thing or something. I don't even know. But anyway, yeah, I've seen this movie a fair amount of times. Um, I recently did the top slasher movies of 1980, and this was on my list. I mean,
Huh.
not saying too much because there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of like pure slasher movies in 1980, but I think it's a relatively solid one. And I mean, it's got Jamie Lee Curtis in it, so it's always worth mentioning.
Hmm.
But yeah, as far as acting, I mean, it's Jamie Lee Curtis. You kind of know what you're gonna expect with her in a horror movie, and she does a pretty good job. Maybe her character isn't as like fleshed out as Laurie Strode or um, as she was like in The Fog or even Prom Night.
Hmm.
But I think I think this is a better movie than Prom Night, which I mean you haven't seen, so you can't really say anything about that.
Blasphemy! How dare you?
Yeah,
I, yeah.
Prom Night, that was Leslie Nielsen's best movie. Uh, I thought Hart Bachner did a pretty decent job as being the Tool.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
No, he.
he's an even bigger Tool in Die Hard, so we get some inklings of that here.
Yeah, I wonder if
Um,
he got typecast, and I don't know his filmography, so I don't know if he ever kind of escaped that role.
yeah, I don't really know his uh, filmography off the top of my head either. Um, yeah, like I said, why is David Copperfield in this? And he was rather wooden, so
Well, I
not
think
really surprising.
I don't know if it was completely deliberate or not, but I mean, I think for the type of movie this was, that fit, especially from the aspect of them trying to mislead you into thinking that he was the bad guy.
Yeah, he's the red herring,
Yeah.
quote unquote. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this movie starts off in a what would become like a trope or cliche in the slasher genre of a prank gone wrong.
Dun dun
And
dun.
I was just like, man, pranks in the 80s were hardcore.
It's like Winston's pranks. Either they're
Yeah.
too small or they're way too big.
Wait, what is this on my shoe? It's a feather tickle foot. Either that or I put a burning skull on your bed and it catches you on fire. And now you're a hideous beast for the rest of your life, like in The Burning. Or we're gonna pretend to seduce you and then you're gonna get in bed and kiss a corpse.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, a
Nasty.
decaying corpse. Yeah. And like these are the pranks that we did in the 80s. But I always thought it was weird, the guy's reaction. I mean, no telling how anybody would react if you're all of a sudden next to a corpse in bed.
Yeah.
But
And
he like
I
spins around in circles and gets tangled up in the um like the curtain of the bed.
yeah, bed canopy or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking when I was watching it, where I was just like, there's no way that the dude can't tell that's a corpse. But to be fair, in the movie, it was lighter for you to be able to tell what was going on.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, we've all been in a dark room before. Depending on how it's set up, yes, it can be extremely difficult to tell
Yeah,
what
especially
else.
if like his eyes haven't adjusted yet.
Yeah. And also, he wears glasses too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um but couldn't you smell the corpse?
I I would kind of think so with how rough a shape that one was in.
Hmm.
But I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things too where I think there's some other stuff that we'll get to where it's just like they didn't really flush it out and think about all the angles of it, and so it's just kind of it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
I like how this movie goes 3 years later because I always joke watching slasher movies that it's always like 5 years later. Just pick a nice round number, 5, 10.
3.5.
Yeah. 3 months later. Yeah.
It should have been, yeah, it should have been something months like they do with pregnancies. 18 months later. Well, not that they would do
37
it.
months later.
Or like
Uh,
newborns, yeah. 18 to 24 months later.
yeah. Oh man. Yeah, so now they're like gonna party on this train and like all the people that were involved in the prank are going on the train and it's a little confusing because like were they all underclassmen? And now they're like seniors, or some of them like Tommy Boy or myself, where you're in college for longer than you should be.
Yeah, no, I think from what I picked up and kind of what their thought process was for explaining it is that because it was some new crap. What's it called? The new people for the fraternity.
Yeah, they're rushing for a fraternity.
Yeah. They have a name. Anyways, but it was there. The people who did the prank that went wrong were sophomores, so they were not the greenhorn, fresh
Ah, okay.
newbies.
Yeah.
And so so 3 years later, they would have been at that graduating point because I was
Okay.
just like, if these are supposed to be like the seniors or like the most upper class people, they should not be in school that much longer. So I
Right.
think it was just one of those things where it's just like, oh, we rushed last year, and so now we get to prank the incoming freshmen.
Yeah.
I could totally be pulling that out of nowhere. I thought I was kind of connecting some of the things that they were saying, but that's again, I think this kind of goes back to the whole corpse thing. Like they maybe didn't really flush it out. They were just like, we'll roll with this. We can make it make sense.
Yeah.
And with
He couldn't
slasher,
smell it. He's Dewey Cox. He has no sense of smell.
right? And with slasher movies, a lot, especially, but movies in general, there's quite often something that they're just kind of like, whatever. Like we're not going to worry about that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then after that, like I said, 3 years later, then it's like boom, we're on a train. Um, I will say one thing about early 80s slashers is that they actually did spend a little bit of time like giving some of the characters personalities before they just destroy them. And just, you get like the jokester guy at the beginning and he's wearing like a Groucho mask or something. And he's like the first one to die
Yeah.
before he doesn't even get on the train. Uh, and then it's kind of like, okay, this dude coming back for vengeance or whatever. Like we're supposed to believe that he like almost like hung himself in that canopy.
hmm
That's kind of how the feeling I got at least. But and the killer goes along, kills people, and then like takes their costumes, which I think is kind of interesting. You don't get like the same look every time, and it's something this movie does that other ones don't.
hmm
Like he's what, the Groucho mask, and then he's
The lizard,
the lizard dude.
the lizard king. I
Yeah, the
eat.
lizard king. uh, yeah, we get a few different looks, and it all kind of meets up at the end. Oh, you get like this weird like ghoul mask too, where it's just like gray hair, almost like one of those creepy like old people mask, I guess.
Yeah, that was the girls thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mitchie.
Yeah.
What a weird name.
Mitch Hedberg.
I just had in What's Bad. I was like, can we stop trying to make Mitchie a thing? Like, I'm wondering if her name was like Michelle and they just call her Mitchie for
Yeah.
short. I'm like, what's wrong with Shelly? Like, can we just stick with that? Because Mitchie sounds weird,
Uh,
even for a guy. Even if it was like a little boy named Mitchell, I wouldn't call him Mitchie. Uh, yeah, I think the different looks of the killer is something it has going for it because the kills are kind of blah.
yeah. I'm trying to.
It's
No.
basically just your typical stabbings, and there's some that are um, off screen, which are always kind of lame. I got a list here. So Edward, he gets stabbed through the gut with a sword. Jackson gets his head bashed in a mirror. That's the Lizard King. Mitchie gets her throat slit off screen. Mo is found dead with ketchup on neck and chest wounds.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Shovels, he must have got them both. So Shovels and the train crew
Oh
member, they're
yeah.
just killed off the screen, yeah.
Yep.
Doc gets decapitated off screen. Chief Porter Donnelly, a scene with a sword in his gut.
Yep.
David Copperfield has swords in his body. Um, and that's pretty much it until the killer gets killed. But and I don't know, even like the final like confrontation with the killer and Jamie Lee Curtis is it's it's okay, by slasher standards, but like it's not anywhere near, like Halloween or even Halloween 2
Yeah.
levels with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Well, I
But
feel the thing that I felt about that, since we just brought it up, is like when they, the time between when they like thought that they figured it out and got him
mm,
and when she gets attacked again. I can't remember exactly how it was. There was like a really long lull. Like they're like trying to bring down your defenses and everything and
yeah,
trying to
get you
make
a
you
little more comfortable.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
trying to make it seem like it's the end of the movie, but it's very obvious that's not. Like they weren't doing enough to sell you on like, oh, this is our happy go lucky ending. It was they're something else is like they're drawing this out, something else is happening, like,
yeah,
and then of course they allude to and they kind of tell you like, oh well, the killer's actually not dead. They that kind of, I don't think worked out super well. Like they told you that before she got attacked, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
And so I feel like it would have been stronger for them to not reach that point and have her get surprise attacked. And then, like, right after that happens, they cut to being like, oh crap, everybody else realized what's wrong, or, whatever, however it was.
yeah,
It was just a little clunky. So,
yeah,
I do definitely agree with you and see with what you said on being like, and again, I don't know the context of what other movies were going on in the 80s in this kind of style genre. But they were a lot of like getting killed off screen, typical slasher and everything, which I mean, it's the 80s. So, things are still relatively fresh at that point. I don't think you need to
yeah.
do
I
anything
mean,
crazy.
Friday the 13th was at the time probably the most gruesome one.
Yeah.
Because man, in 1980, I'm trying to think on my list I did on my YouTube video. There's Friday the 13th, there's Prom Night, there's this, Christmas Evil, which we've watched.
Mm-hmm.
Um, To All a Good Night. That one's not very like brutal or anything. Uh, The Unseen, that one's really not either. They're a little more slow at this time. Uh, I guess another one is Fade to Black,
Okay.
which I mean you could even really argue if it's a full-on slasher, if it's more of a character study. Same with Christmas Evil, but well, I guess probably the most brutal one at the time was Maniac. Maniac is probably the most brutal. That was another Tom Savini special effect one.
Okay.
Like you got a legit head explosion and women being scalped and stuff in it. So that
Uh,
one's pretty gruesome.
a little bit of an upgrade from this.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like, it hasn't been super oversaturated or anything. You don't need to do something crazy different here in the 80s, personally, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily view it as a potential negative. It's kind of more like it is what it is. It's a product of its time, in my
yeah,
opinion.
they got the job done.
Yeah.
I think it's more relying on the idea that it's on a train
Mm-hmm.
because I mean you're moving in this train and it's close quarters, I guess. So you can't really like get away.
Yeah.
So the idea of that is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, you can't get away, you can't escape. There, and then they also drive home the whole concept of there is no radio.
Yeah, yeah, they do
So
that before they take off.
yeah, definitely on your
Eh,
own.
Yeah, very. Um, I don't even know how to say it. Like solitude.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, Man, I think that's really all I got for what was like good and great. Really, the only thing I had that was great was Jamie Lee Curtis. Um, I thought the twist was kind of unique. Maybe it wasn't handled like the greatest, but the idea of, the killer is Kenny coming back, but you kind of figure that, but you don't really know how he got there and everything. And you find out that he was the woman that was with David Copperfield,
Mhm.
um, just dressed like in drag, and then he's gets thrown overboard by Jamie Lee Curtis, and like he's still hanging on the train. And then he like takes over the clothes and everything of the conductor and
Yeah.
surprises her. Yeah,
Yeah. It was like fake ending number one, fake ending number two. And
yeah,
then I think the third one was final, or maybe there was another fake one.
yeah,
I can't
something like
remember.
that. And then he gets thrown overboard and lands like head first in the ice, and then floats down a river.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, it, I was a little surprised. I mean, because I mean, let's face it, this movie came out in the '80s, and so there's been 30 plus years of seeing cliches and how these movies are pan out and everything.
hmm
I feel like I should have kind of seen it coming. Um, I very early on obviously was suspecting things with the magician, but I actually remember when they started doing the show, I was just like, man, that his helper is kind of manly looking and totally didn't even like nothing registered.
yeah.
And I didn't even think of it, and I felt kind of dumb later when that wound up being the thing. I'm being like, I did not even connect the dots.
I didn't even notice it the first time I saw it.
Uh,
Yeah. Um, and then it kind of like surprised me at the end. But I always say that I'm terrible at picking up on things like that. You're usually the one that's more observant and can see things coming, and I'm the one that's like, oh, I
oh
could try to figure out
yeah,
who the killer is, and I'm almost always wrong. So like when I first saw this, I'm like, okay, it's Kenny coming back to kill people.
yeah,
But then it's almost like Sleepaway Camp, where it's
hmm
like it's obvious that it's Angela doing it, but that's not the twist.
yeah. Well, it kind
Yeah.
of would have been a little bit interesting that one of the things that popped in my head was, oh, is it him or like does he have a sister that's seeking revenge or something?
Oh yeah. There's been
So
a lot of those in the 80s slashers.
yeah,
Uh I don't will ever watch it, but
or maybe
spoiler if
it's
anybody wants to watch this movie, The Initiation
okay.
is what it's at. It's one of those evil twin. I think Happy Birthday to Me was another one too that was had something like that as well. It's been a while since I've watched that one.
Hmm.
But yeah, another thing I thought maybe wasn't like the greatest about this, it is a little slow. I mean, it's got enough going on that keeps you interested, but it is a little bit slow, which I mean can be common with some of the early 80s ones.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't so horrible. The I won't go into it again, but probably the part and the element to me on slow being a problem was how they handled the ending, where it was almost kind of like you were ready for it to be done
Yeah.
and you knew they were not giving you the ending just yet because they're like,
hmm
but wait, there's more. The rest of it I felt like moved along relatively well. I mean, gosh, what it was I think I had it marked down. It was like 13 minutes in and the first guy got killed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it got off to a quick start, which for some of these movies is good. I mean, there's been plenty of those that we've watched where they haven't killed anyone for a really long time. Um, and those aren't even always considered uh, slow. Maybe a slow burn, but they keep you engaged and everything. So,
Yeah. I will say out of the early 80s, late 70s horror movies with Jamie Lee Curtis, um, I mean, I got Halloween number one, obviously.
mhm.
Uh, then probably The Fog is number two, and then Halloween 2. Then this, and then Prom Night, which I'm just not a fan of Prom Night. Like, it's really slow compared to this even.
Okay.
But I mean, I doubt we'll ever really watch that. I've watched it a few times, and it's not one of my favorites. There's a lot of people that do like it, but
Hmm.
it has disco dancing scenes in it,
Yeah,
so
John
there's that.
Travolta.
Pretty much. Jamie Lee Curtis dancing with whoever her date was. I don't remember. And her dad is Leslie Nielsen. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, as far as a early '80s Canadian slasher movie, I think it's pretty solid. Um, yeah, anything else to add, or you want me to get into the trivia and facts?
Trivia and facts.
All right. So this cracks me up, and this is definitely how kind of things were in the early '80s. So the idea for Terror Train came from a dream that David Goldnick had. He was the writer.
Hmm.
One weekend after seeing the movies Halloween and Silver Streak, he woke up in the middle of the night and said to his wife, "What do you think about putting Halloween on a train?" And his wife answered, "That's terrible." So he jotted down "terrible train" on a piece of paper on his nightstand.
Hmm.
And when he woke up in the morning, he changed the title to Terror Train and he wrote 22 pages. And then he made a deal with Sandy Howard's company at 3 in the afternoon
Jeez.
to make the movie.
Gosh.
It's like, what if we put Halloween? And that's basically how all of them work. Because it's like, what if we put Halloween in a summer camp? That's
What
Friday the
if we
13th.
put Jason Voorhees in space?
Yeah. What if we put um Halloween on a train, Terror Train? But so the train was rocked back and forth in a warehouse in Montreal, Canada, to simulate the motion of the train.
Hmm.
So Jamie Lee Curtis shot this back to back with the movie Prom Night.
Okay.
Yeah. This is David Copperfield's only acting role,
Oh wow. Okay.
and he had such a hard time doing his lines and got so frustrated that once the movie was done, like he vowed he would never do another movie again.
Oh man.
Yeah. So Jamie Lee Curtis appeared in Halloween, The Fog, Prom Night, and Terror Train in less than 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. There was friction between director Roger Spottiswoode and the actor Derek McKinnon, who played Kenny,
Hmm.
during the shoot, which Spottiswoode claimed was a result of his inexperience. Spottiswoode said he wasn't really an actor, he was a transvestite from the streets of Montreal, and he wasn't familiar with the concepts of contract and showing up for work on time. In a strange way, though, he did a pretty good job, and he was familiar with the world of cheap theater and was strangely effective.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
which, I mean, he didn't do a bad job if you think about it, if he's just some dude off the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. The temperature got so cold one evening that the filming camera got completely frozen. Yeah.
Ouch.
Which I feel like we watched something else where that happened too, but I don't remember what it was.
The Thing? No, I don't
It might
know.
have been. Steam train smoke was simulated by burning a combination of charcoal and church incense.
Hmm.
The opening prologue of the college bonfire was the very last scene of the movie that was filmed. It was added during post-production around a month after the principal filming ended as a tie-in to the origins of the character Kenny.
Oh, that's a good thing they did that.
Yeah,
Because that would have been really weird.
yeah. During the final fight scene when Jamie Lee Curtis is being attacked by the stuntman standing in for Kenny, she slams a cage door against the stuntman's face. The production crew was supposed to replace the door with a collapsible one,
Oh
but forgot to.
gosh.
So a metal spoke punctured the man's face and injured him. Yeah. And Jamie Lee Curtis was so upset that she left the set and couldn't come back for 2 days afterwards.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That'd be so horrible.
Yeah. Then the last thing I got is this movie cost $3.5 million and it made 8 million in the box office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Success.
Yeah. Doubled its money.
Yeah.
So grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what are they?
IMDb. Blah, 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 blah. 6.1.
5.8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomato critic. 60%.
47.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomato audience 52%.
37.
Oh my gosh, it kept
I don't know why this movie got such like low ratings.
yeah, crazy.
I would say, because I've seen hundreds of slasher movies like from the 80s, and this one I would put in like the, I don't know, top 85% of them.
Huh.
Like, I don't know, I think it's pretty decent. uh, our grades. I guess I'll let you go first.
Oh man. I I feel pretty comfortable giving it a 4 out of 5. Um it's it's kind of a unique concept. I mean, like there have been plenty of movies about, murders on trains and then I don't know if there was much before this, but I mean, there's been plenty of slasher stuff on trains since then or
Yeah.
zombies or whatever. Snakes on a train probably something. Um but it just doesn't really jump out to me as something like boom, wow, like great.
Yeah.
And so it usually like I kind of work my way backwards where it's just like, is it easy for me to say, boom, fantastic, give this 5 out of 5? If it's not easy, then definitely not giving a 5 out of 5. But if I cannot come up with a decent, easy argument for being like, yeah, but 4.5 is totally where it should land. There's not really anything given to me from this film that makes that argument for me. Is it
Yeah.
rewatchable? Sure. It's a decent concept. It was executed relatively well. There wasn't really anything weighing it down badly. But there also weren't elements that were helping it rise above everything else.
Yeah.
So I feel good giving it a 4 out of 5. One last thing that I'll say, I actually was kind of like skimming through my notes here before we're kind of going to wrap things up. And one thing I forgot to mention is I must say, um, usually like a lot of these movies don't really get me with jump scares and things like that, just
Hmm.
because, especially these earlier ones, so many cliches that we've seen for decades now. But when Doc's head fell out of the compartment, you knew something was coming.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure what it was going to be, but the falling head did make me jump a little bit. I don't know exactly why, but that one caught me off guard.
Yeah, they got me the first time I saw it too.
So,
Um, so my grade, I ended up with a 4 as well.
rock.
And watching this, I'm like, it's a pretty above average slasher. I mean, I've seen plenty that were worse. I've seen a few that were better. And then I'm wondering, like, would this movie be as memorable if Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't in it?
Mm,
Because I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is like usually widely considered the scream queen,
yeah.
the best final girl ever in slasher movies. So I mean, if she wasn't in it and some other like no-name actress was in it, it might not be as memorable. But I think the twist at the end, gives you a little bit of something. And the idea of that it is on a train and it's like one of the first to do that. But and different looks of the killer and everything. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, I think a 4 out of 5 is pretty solid. Like, it's not anything amazing, but like I said, I would put it in the top 80, 85 percentile of 80 slasher movies.
Rock.
Yeah. So, um, next time it's gonna be a brand new year,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna be going into 2025, and we're gonna be doing Awesomely Bad Month because I mean that's kind of our bread and butter right there. That's our wheelhouse. Um, Yeah, and we're gonna be doing. I can give the list of movies here. I guess I've been doing that lately. Um, Next week though is gonna be a classic in The Toxic Avenger, and I believe that's gonna be your first trauma movie. And I would say that's probably the best trauma movie. So if you don't care for it, then you know where you stand with trauma. Then after we got Basket Case, which is a really wacky movie. It's made by the same dude that did Brain Damage that we watched.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of know what to expect with that.
Hmm.
After that is Zapped, the Scott Baio movie, and then Howard the Duck, and then finishing out the month is going to be Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is probably the most infamous bad movie. So, yeah, should be a good time. Awesomely Bad's always a good time, so
Oh yeah.
looking forward to it. If you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can follow us on social media, and we're on pretty much every platform. Um, we almost always get episodes out on Friday, but with the holiday, it kind of threw a wrench into everything. So
Yeah.
we got this one out a little bit late, but yeah. Come by next time. We're going to be talking about the Toxic Avenger. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.